Hi there, I'm Ken Lammers. This is Commonplace Catholic. Peace be with all y'all. This week we're going to talk about the levels of doctrine in the Catholic Church. So, let's get
Lord Jesus Christ.
युगान युग तेरा ही है.
Ilekroć bowiem sprawujemy pamiątkę ofiary Chrystusa,
Kweli ni vema na haki tukushukuru daima na popote, Bwana Baba mwema.
主の御体と御血になりますように。
Okay, so the Catholic Church has been around for since 33 A.D. A lot of time to develop doctrine over all this time period, and so it as if you how do you know what doctrine is entitled to what weight? Well, okay, if you look at the Catholic profession of faith, like the real formal one that comes out of Rome and all that sort of stuff, you see the Nicene Creed, and then you see three levels of I believe this, I believe that, and I believe that, and I'm going to follow these things. And, we don't say that every week in church. In church, we just do, when they say, and let us profess our faith, you do the Nicene Creed, right? You don't do those next three levels. And they lay out the doctrine. And most of the stuff I'm going to be talking to you about today comes out of really a document that Cardinal Ratzinger, when he was head of the dicastery for the Doctrine of the Faith, what he put out interpreting this. Now, the dicastery is just a word for bureau or department, right? Bureaucracy or bureau. And for those who don't know what this was the Inquisition. And Cardinal Ratzinger went on to become Pope Benedict. So that's what we're talking about here. And I'm going to go through each level, and then I'm going to give you a little bit of a show of at least one list of the level, what's in each level. So here's what they are, right? Now, I am sure that some theologian out there will come to you and say, well, really, the proper titles, the more involved proper titles are this, that, and the other thing, and get a lot more, in depth about this. Well, that's not what I'm aiming here for. I'm just going to show you these three. Yeah, it wasn't like when I was reading about it, it said divine, definitive, ordinary, these were, I have, brought these titles out of what I was reading in it. So the three levels are divine, definitive, and ordinary. Sometimes you see ordinary broken down to ordinary, and then beneath that prudential, but ordinary includes prudential teachings. So let's go through and talk about what these three different levels are. First, what we get is divine. And the divine is divinely and formally revealed doctrines and teachings. Now, these can be written. Clearly, the source there would be the Bible, but it could also be writings of the patriarchs, the apostles, anyone back in the day. It can also come through tradition, right, which generally is reliant heavily on what I was just talking about, writings of patriarchs, people who knew the apostles, saints through the years, that sort of thing. And they are unchanging and unchangeable. This is, what would be a divine teaching, a divine doctrine. Jesus died on the cross, right? That's there. And, that is a core belief, right? How do we recognize these through the years? Well, they can be recognized through the years in different ways. A pope can recognize them speaking ex cathedra. And when a pope speaks ex cathedra, which means from the seat, right? The seat of Peter, it means he's the pope. He is speaking infallibly. He says, this is it, right? This is here. And there's at least one pope, and I can't remember which one it was, but he said, I am not infallible, so I'm not going to speak infallibly, right? And if you try to look up a list of what infallible statements popes have made, you will see arguments about that. And the only real thing that I can see is one or two statements that a pope said about Mary, right? Other than that, they really haven't operated ex cathedra a lot, despite having that ability. Next, we get how they can be this kind of doctrine can be recognized by the church is through a council of bishops. If the bishops come together in council, this is the Council of Nicaea, the Council of Hippo, the Council of Trent, the Council of Vatican I, Vatican II, right? These councils meet, and the bishops as a whole decide this is it. We recognize this as a divine belief, a divine doctrine of the Church of Christianity, right? Now, that's the far more common way. Even it's not common. Just imagine trying to bring all the bishops from all around the world to do this. It's more common, far more common than the ex cathedra from the Pope, right? And then we get a third way, which is the magisterium. This is if it's ordinary and universal teachings of the magisterium. Magisterium basically are your bishops, all your bishops, but not meeting in council. So if your local bishop, is saying something to the effect of, you can't hop on one leg on your way to work, but no other bishop in the world saying that, that's called an ordinary teaching. I don't know why your bishop would be doing that, but okay, he's spotted some problem in your area, right? But since the rest of the world isn't doing it, that's not an ordinary and universal, and therefore it's not a divine doctrine, right? But hard to think of what would fall under this so much that it hadn't actually made it into a council, but it can happen. If you do not follow the divine doctrines, the divine beliefs, you are a heretic. You're in heresy, right? So these are the top level beliefs. You don't believe in the Trinity. You don't believe that Jesus died on the cross. Things like this. If you don't believe those, you're in heresy, right? So that's what there is about divine beliefs. They are the core beliefs you must absolutely hold. Then we get the definitive beliefs. Now, these are the beliefs that are necessary for faithfully keeping and expounding the deposit of the faith, right? These are, for those of you who are constitutional scholars in the United States, penumbras, right? Although they seem to be tied in stronger than penumbras are in the U.S. But these are doctrines and beliefs that have a historical relationship to the divine beliefs and have a logical connection to them, and that's where they come from. Again, they are recognized the same way that the divine beliefs are. The Pope can say something ex cathedra. The bishops in council can meet and say, yeah, here it is. And the magisterium across the world, if all the bishops across the world start teaching this, it can be recognized as a definitive faith or belief, right? It is the secondary doctrine. Now, if you are not following a definitive doctrine, faith, belief, you are not in full communion with the church. It's not quite as bad as being a straight out and out heretic, because you're not walking away from a core belief, but it is showing you're not in full communion. Now, then we get the third level. Now, this is the ordinary level of teaching. These are authentic expressions of the ordinary magisterium. This is your local bishop coming out and saying, hey, we're having a problem with this. People are hopping as they come into our churches. Stop that, right? And These are things, well, that deepen the understanding of your faith, conform with the faith, and warn against error. Is it an error to hop into the church? I don't know, but it's that's my example. No analogy is perfect. So if you fail in this, you're either in error, right, or you're acting rationally and dangerously. Ordinary teachings can have two things. There's like general stuff to help you along theologically, and then there's prudential teachings to keep you from harming yourself or others, either physically or in a manner of your soul, right? So these are your, just general things your bishop's saying as you go along, right? Okay, so those are the three levels of doctrine and belief. So what as you might imagine, what makes it into each list is something that it can be a contentious thing, and you can see this by going through and looking at different sites and seeing what they say are in there. Your hardcore, uber conservatives, and conservatives generally want to say everything is divine teaching. It's all divine teaching. You're a heretic if you don't follow 100% down the line. So they will put they'll claim as much as they can listed into divine teachings, right? And it's hard, you read their lists and then they move to what's definitive, and that list suddenly gets a lot shorter, and you're like, well, I think some of that stuff over there needs to be here too, right? So this is what your hardcore folks want. On the other hand, your kind of leftist, soft people who want to change the church all the time and reflect society, they will go and want to have things, as many of them in definitive or just plain ordinary teaching as they can, right? They'll want to move all this stuff. Yeah. We believe that the Trinity, and we believe Jesus died on the cross, but all these other teachings you've got, those should be definitive. They should not be, divine, and they might even skip all the way down to ordinary. We need to have them down there so that we can adapt, right? That's where your more left-wing parts of the church are at. So, and the rest of us are somewhere in the middle trying to figure out where we think things should be, right? Now, I have got a list here that I put together from Cardinal Ratzinger, again, who later became Pope Benedict. And let's be fair here, Ratzinger was considered fairly conservative, if not pretty hard conservative. And he, so his list should be considered in that light. Now, it's not saying he was wrong. I'm just saying that, if you're trying to decide whether or not he leans this way or whether he leant towards this, I think you're looking more this way, right? So, let's see what Cardinal Ratzinger, Pope Benedict, said. Now, for the divine, he puts in the Nicene Creed. I'm absolutely solid there. Christ in the Eucharist. Yep. Church is founded by Christ. Original sin. Pretty straightforward. And immortality of the soul and immediacy of going to your afterlife, right? That's in there as well. Now, he also put in the Marian doctrines under divine, which I think a fair number of people in the world might think are definitive, right? Because they are not involved in the Trinity and in the mystery of Jesus and the sacrifice. But it is definitely considered very, very important to Catholics. But he puts it under divine, which I'm sure satisfied quite a few people. Now, in definitive, he points to, well, the Pope has said things are definitive. It's like only male priests, right? and euthanasia is wrong. Pope has said that. And in universal and ordinary, again, these are like all the bishops in the world have come to this. You get prostitution is bad, and adultery is bad, right? So that's kind of where you have what he has in definitive. Again, I would have thought some of that would have fallen under ordinary, especially the last two. Um, Maybe even, well, yeah, especially the last two. And then under ordinary, now this wasn't in the list. Now, if you read his commentary on the Profession of Faith, those are all in the commentary, right? The ordinary he didn't give a list of, but I found an article talking about what he said, in a conversation or an interview, and he said, for ordinary, there's like religious freedom, which doesn't mean what we mean in the United States, freedom of conscience to choose your own religion. It means religion freed from influence by the state. That's what religious freedom means here. Anti-modernism, which was a big thing for a while, the church saw long before apparently we schlubs did the dangers of socialism, communism, sort of things like that, and the falling apart of the threads of what held our communities together and families and all that. And I mean, to be clear here, the church also sees, over capitalism, uber capitalism as a potential evil as well. So these are kind of all ordinary teachings. And of course, then we get bioethics, which I don't remember if this was in his statement or I think this was put in another article I read. But bioethics, what are the ordinary teachings on bioethics? Because I don't think there's been, to the best of my knowledge, I don't think there's been a council or a papal teaching ex cathedra on bioethics. So that's where you run into that. Now, as anybody who looks at this can see, there are things here that could shift back and forth between these, and it depends on where you think things should belong. And there is no definitive list. There is the list of commentary that is done by, the Dicastery for the Doctrine of the Faith, right? But there is no, to take it further, that's not a teaching by council of bishops or a teaching from the Pope ex cathedra. That would fall more under, that itself falls more under an ordinary teaching by, at the time, bishop, nay cardinal, nay pope, Benedict, who was saying this is the list, right? But that's an ordinary teaching. So that's not as strong as the others and could be changed. Particularly if, like I say, if a council of bishops meets to make this decision or the Pope. And I don't think you're ever going to find a definitive list, this, right? So, while we have categories, and like I said, they're clearly things that fall under divine, right? Jesus dying on the cross, the Trinity, Jesus' resurrection. That's all falls under divine teachings. But what, adding things in, like I said, the Marian doctrines being underneath divine, I would have thought they'd be under definitive, right? And I'm sure there are a lot of people out there who are hardcore Catholics who would strongly disagree with me on that. But I would think they would fall there as not being a core belief, as not being a core belief in the Trinity, in Jesus, the sacrifice, and all that leads you to heaven, right? But, it doesn't bother me either way, really. But I just, as a intellectual exercise, would think it'd be definitive. And anybody who disagrees, please feel free, comment down below. All right, so that's basically doctrine, how doctrine is organized or is thought to be organized in the Catholic Church. That's it for this week. Hopefully it's been fairly quick. As I always say, I'm saying over and over again, this is meant to provoke thought. I'm not telling you that I got every jot and tittle here, every bit of it, perfect. I am not. Never got my doctorate or master's in theology. I did have an undergrad degree in studying religion, but it mostly did translations from the Quran, the Tanakh, and that sort of thing. But go research this stuff yourself. It's not like the old days where you had to find some place, some musty book somewhere. You can get on the internet and find things out, and it can be really interesting at times. All that said, I hope this was helpful. Hit like, subscribe, hit the bell so you know when I do the next one of these, and understand that this is not something that's been approved by the church. Not anybody from the lowest hermit all the way to the Pope. Nobody's approved this in the church. And as I say always, on the other hand, I ain't seen the Inquisition beating on my door either. So we're somewhere in the middle, folks. I hope you enjoyed this, and it was somewhat somewhat informative. That's the word. And so, well, I'm going to take off until next week, and hopefully next week we'll have another, maybe a little bit more interesting topic than this. We'll see if this gets more than the 6 views my one on the scapulars did. See you next time, folks.